And guys, now to the terrifying aftermath of a massive 8.7. Initially, we had figured it out at an 8.8 magnitude quake in Russia. Now, this video showing, and there's video coming in from all over the place right now, but look at that. That's an operating theater right there. They're doing surgery. Doctors in Russia performing surgery, and the quake starts. You can see all the doctors rushing to keep the patient safe while this building shook, but that's not all the video, because this is a world event.
Precision is when you are doing surgery.
Imagine. And 8.8, by the way, that's like the 6th ranked worst earthquake on the planet.
But it's actually an 8.7?
Now I think they usually modify them 8.7.
Still 8.7, 8.8, it is strong. The quake hit just off the Russian western coast last night, prompting tsunami warnings in Japan, Hawaii, Alaska, and parts of the west coast here in America. And this is what the waves look like on Japan's Pacific coast. Reported waves reaching as high as 9 feet.
In Hawaii, the roads turned into gridlock as people rushed to evacuate Honolulu due to the tsunami warnings, and the impacts could still be felt on the west coast today, and that is exactly where we find ABC's Christiane Cordero live in Santa Monica. Christiane, we do see some sizable waves behind you. What can you tell us?
Yeah, it's really kind of just the magnitude of the effects of this earthquake in Russia, thousands of miles off the coast of where I'm standing here in California, right? But as you guys noted, I think massive is the way to describe an 8.8, 8.7 earthquake off the coast there. Unsurprisingly, most of the damage that has been reported so far, in fact, just about all of it, is reported in Russia, in those coastal towns on its eastern shore. But we have seen in those towns some pretty catastrophic stuff as far as buildings getting swept away, people climbing to higher ground. You know, you think about, right, the fact that this tsunami event was going on for about 20 minutes or so, and how powerful water is, and that's really what those people in Russia are dealing with right now off of the eastern, or rather on the eastern coast there. And then it obviously sent this quite literal ripple effect across the Pacific Rim from here in California, but then also when you look at a place like Hawaii, right? And not only the fact that it's sitting right in the middle of the ocean, but that it is a little bit more geographically complicated for people to find a safer area. And so there were evacuation warnings that were taken seriously for many people in Hawaii. It seems like most of the event itself has passed, and at its peak it clocked 5.7 waves off the coast of Maui. So nothing huge there, but it is good, of course, that those evacuation warnings were taken seriously, and then now flights are resuming back to Hawaii. You mentioned Japan as well. Talk about a place, right, that takes its evacuation warnings really seriously when it comes to tsunamis specifically because of the trauma that they have endured. And there 2 million people were evacuated. But really, as we kind of zoom out here, we're talking the entire Pacific Rim. And so that's here in California, most notably up in the far northern region of California. We're talking really past San Francisco, Mendocino County, Crescent City. Lesser known, but also much more familiar with these types of events with tsunami warnings and things of that nature. And we haven't quite seen, it seems, the quote-unquote worst of that happening yet. If in fact that has passed, then we would get some kind of warning of it. But if it doesn't amount to anything, then of course that would be good news for people in that region. But guys, we're seeing tsunami warnings and certain kind of other evacuation warnings throughout California, throughout even further south, both in the French Polynesia and then in South America, there have been some warnings as well. And so you really kind of talk about the mass scale of this. No deaths reported so far, so that is good news. And then the other silver lining here too is the fact that this massive earthquake, for how huge it was, that it happened off the coast and not on land where perhaps there would have been certainly much more damage.
Certainly. Yeah, and Christiane, quick question for you. Just from knowing California, knowing Hawaii and the culture that it is, sometimes people see these waves and they hear tsunami and they want to get out in the water and do some surfing. And are you noticing anything like that there where you're standing?
Yeah, not in Santa Monica where we are right now. This isn't necessarily, we're kind of close to the pier, so it's not necessarily a big surf area, but I would bet that there are people a little bit further north and a little bit further south who are out in the water. Typically what happens in Southern California is that, they know that there will be people who are out and about and trying to catch bigger waves, and so there will be extra patrols. And then there will be a lot of warnings about, make sure that if you are out in the water that you actually know what you're doing. This is not the day to learn how to surf.
Exactly.
And actually, thank you, Christiane, by the way, for being there. And you did a wonderful job of kind of connecting all the dots on what was a massive event, really, that 8.7 earthquake. We have, the National Weather Service in San Francisco basically said to people, the first waves are not always the worst in a tsunami situation. They want everybody to take this seriously for at least 24 hours and just to stay away from the coast. I would say that's good advice for all of the West Coast. Also, we have a tsunami warning center, and there are 2 locations for that. One of them is in Alaska, the other's in Hawaii, and we have a tsunami warning system that comprised of like 39 buoys and 60 stations. These buoys have part that sit above the water, and they have a tail that goes all the way down into the water. They are constantly measuring the movement of the water, so as any wave passes that, they're able to know how tall the wave is and how wide the wave is. So because tsunami waves aren't always just like your garden variety wave. You're not just hopping over that wave. Sometimes they can be hundreds of feet and take 5 minutes to pass. So you really have to understand that this is not a normal ocean. It's not a normal ocean wave. And people on the West Coast and to Hawaii have to take it seriously because that's the ring of fire. All along that Pacific area, as Christiane pointed out, that's where all the action, most of the planets, most of the world's seismic events will happen in that area. That's why they take it so seriously.